The moment humanity broke the rhythm of nature.
Nearly 10,000 years, human life moved to a single rhythm. The rhythm of the sun rising and setting. The rhythm of seasons turning slowly, predictably. Tools were nothing more than extensions of the human hand. A plow followed the strength of an ox. A mill wheel followed the patience of a river. A sail followed the mercy of the wind. Power was limited, production was slow, and the world was finite. A merchant walking through a market in 1700 lived in a world fundamentally unchanged from that of a merchant in ancient Rome. Goods were handmade, communities were local, time itself felt heavier, slower. But beneath the soil of the British Isles, in a damp, mineral-rich land shaped by rain and stone, something ancient was waiting. Energy, stored for millions of years. And in the late 18th century, humanity learned how to unlock it. The birth of a new age. Around 1760, the old rhythm began to fracture. Humans discovered how to extract power directly from the earth, not from muscle, not from water, not from wind, but from buried sunlight, compressed into black stone. Coal. With it came heat. With heat came steam, and with steam came motion on a scale the world had never witnessed. This moment would later be called the Industrial Revolution. A transformation so profound it reshaped economies, cities, societies, and even the human sense of time itself. It marked the transition from hand production to machines, from organic growth to mechanical acceleration. It was the moment humanity learned to command energy at will. Why Britain?
Revolutions are never accidents. They emerge where conditions align, and no nation was better prepared than Great Britain.
18th century, Britain was the leading commercial power on Earth. Its empire stretched across oceans, from the Caribbean plantations to the markets of India. Its ports were crowded with ships. Its cities buzzed with merchants, financiers, inventors, and thinkers. But Britain's greatest advantage lay underground. It sat atop vast seams of coal, cheap, accessible, and abundant. This single resource, combined with ambition and opportunity, would ignite a chain reaction that consumed the old world and forged a new one. The 5 pillars of industrial supremacy. Britain surged ahead because it possessed 5 critical advantages. First, agricultural productivity. The British agricultural revolution had already transformed farming. Iron plows, crop rotation, and mechanical seed drills produced more food with fewer hands. Surplus food meant surplus people, a massive labor force freed from the land and searching for work. Second, political stability and law. Unlike much of Europe, Britain had a stable government and a legal system that protected property and innovation. Patents rewarded inventors. Joint stock companies allowed risk sharing on an unprecedented scale. Geography. An island nation with navigable rivers and long coastlines, Britain could move goods cheaply and efficiently. Waterways became industrial arteries. Fourth, scientific culture. The scientific revolution of the 17th century had created a culture of experimentation. Knowledge was shared. Mechanics and philosophers collaborated. Fifth, high wages and cheap energy. Hiring labor was expensive. Coal was cheap. The incentive was clear: replace men with machines. The textile spark. Before factories, production followed the putting out system. Across villages in Lancashire, families worked from home. Women spun yarn, men wove cloth on hand looms. Life was slow, domestic, and personal. But demand was exploding. Britain had developed a hunger for cotton, the white gold of the era. Yet British cloth could not compete with the exquisite hand-woven cotton of India. Indian labor was cheaper, Indian quality was unmatched. The British government tried to block imports through the Calico Acts, but the market refused to be controlled. So entrepreneurs turned to innovation. Machines enter the home. In 1733, John Kay's flying shuttle doubled a weaver's productivity overnight. But it created a crisis. Spinners could not keep up. It took 8 spinners to supply one loom. The bottleneck persisted until James Hargreaves introduced the spinning jenny, a machine that allowed one worker to spin multiple threads simultaneously. It was small, it fit inside a cottage, but it changed everything. Then came Richard Arkwright. His water frame required power and scale. It could not sit in a home, it needed rivers. Arkwright built the world's first true cotton mills, enforcing discipline, schedules, and industrial organization. Production was no longer a family affair, it was now a system. Finally, Samuel Crompton's spinning mule combined speed with strength, producing yarn finer than anything made by hand. The floodgates opened. A city of smoke. In 1750, Britain imported 2.5 million pounds of raw cotton. By 1850, that number had exploded into the hundreds of millions. Manchester transformed from a modest town into Cottonopolis, a city of factories, chimneys, and endless motion. The sky darkened with smoke, the air vibrated with spindles, the cost of cloth fell, and the human cost rose. British machines eventually undercut Indian artisans, collapsing entire industries and leaving millions without work. The global consequences were devastating. Steam, the invisible army. While looms spun above ground, another revolution brewed below. Coal mines flooded as they grew deeper. Traditional pumps failed. Necessity gave birth to the steam engine. Early engines, like those of Thomas Newcomen, were massive and inefficient, but coal was cheap. Then James Watt transformed everything. By separating the condenser from the cylinder, Watt created an engine that wasted far less energy. Paired with his partner Matthew Boulton, steam became efficient, flexible, and unstoppable. For the first time in history, factories no longer depended on rivers. They could be built anywhere. Steam powered furnaces. Steam hammered iron. Steam drove looms. Mechanical labor multiplied into an invisible army of horsepower. Iron, cities, and the cost of progress. Coal reshaped iron production. Charcoal was replaced by coke. Blast furnaces grew larger. Iron became cheaper. Bridges, machines, and factories rose from cast iron skeletons. But the labor was brutal. Puddlers worked in infernos. Few survived to old age. Cities exploded. In 1800, only 3% of humanity lived in cities. By 1900, nearly half did. Manchester's population surged from thousands to millions. Housing collapsed under demand. Slums formed overnight. Water was contaminated. Disease was constant. Progress smelled of sewage and smoke. The human machine. Inside factories, time itself changed. Work followed the clock, not the sun. Shifts stretched 14 hours. Children crawled beneath machines. Women worked for a fraction of a man's wage. Discipline was enforced with fines and force. The human body became part of the machine. Outrage followed. reform slowly arrived through the Factory Acts, limiting hours and child labor. Unions formed.